Throughout humanity's existence, history has always been written by the victors. The same is true in Star Wars. Written by the notable Republic and Jedi sympathizer, George Lucas, the original trilogy shows the events of Star Wars from the point of view of the victorious Rebel Alliance. We are therefore presented with the idea that the rebels were freedom fighters, hellbent on restoring the good and righteous Republic. On the other hand, the Empire is presented as a tyrannical regime, led by two evil and selfish Sith Lords. The Mandalorian and the prequels have briefly delved into the opposing view that the Republic was corrupt and chaotic, while the rebels were terrorists, from a certain point of view. But despite this, it is still the widespread view that Palpatine was in fact evil. In this video, we will be exploring the alternative perspective and asking the question, was Palpatine actually a force for good in the Star Wars galaxy? So first of all, yes, Palpatine did some awful things. He orchestrated the Clone Wars, blew up Alderaan, and implemented a harsh and oppressive regime across the galaxy. And of course, these are all awful things. However, to determine whether these actions were actually justified within the context of the Star Wars galaxy, we must first explore some philosophy surrounding morality and what actually makes someone good or evil. The moral philosophy of consequentialism might actually suggest that Palpatine was a good guy. In its most basic form, consequentialism suggests that the consequences of someone's actions should form the basis in understanding whether or not those actions were right or wrong. For example, if an evil genius was about to blow up New York, a consequentialist would argue that it would be morally right to kill the evil genius if it would save the lives of all the New Yorkers, even though murder is usually seen as morally wrong. As we shall explore in this video, the same could be argued for Palpatine, only on a much grander scale. After the events of the original trilogy, in Legends, an extragalactic species known as the Yuzong Vong greatly threatened the galaxy. The Yuzong Vong had taken over and destroyed their galaxy thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin, and had spent the majority of that time in the void between galaxies, their sights set firmly on invading the Star Wars galaxy. What made this species so terrifying was their advanced organic technology and fierce devotion to a crusade against machinery. This species had originally been peaceful, but a war between two advanced AI pushed the Yuzong Vong's culture into a dark and violent direction. Using their biological technology, they eventually drove the AI from the galaxy. However, they soon turned their advanced weaponry on each other and other biological species. The resulting war left their whole galaxy uninhabitable. The survivors spent the next few thousand years travelling to the galaxy far, far away, on thousands of 100-kilometre bioships. The first Yuzong Vong scout ships arrived during the Old Republic era, with just one small probe decimating a whole brigade of Neo-Crusader Mandalorians. Its weapons were said to be able to melt through Beskar armour as though it was wax. When the main invasion arrived, around 30 years after the Battle of Yavin, 325 trillion inhabitants of the Star Wars galaxy were wiped out, far more than the Clone Wars and the Galactic Civil War combined. It was only through sheer luck that the New Republic was able to defeat them, and really, the Yuzong Vong should have completely steamrolled them. So how is this related to Palpatine being a good guy? Well, in actual fact, Palpatine was one of the few individuals who was aware of this incoming invasion, and had been informed about the Yuzong Vong well before the Clone Wars took place. In fact, the reason for Grand Admiral Thrawn joining the Empire was to help organise the galaxy into a military machine that could protect his species from the impending invasion. Likewise, Palpatine's acceptance of Thrawn into his human-centric military was largely because he held information on the Vong. Palpatine and the Sith believed in the pursuit of power and order, with the Empire simply being a reflection of these beliefs. The Sith believed that the pursuit of peace would lead to stagnation, arrogance, and weakness, allowing for more powerful enemies to ultimately defeat them. The revelation of the Yuzong Vong would provide Palpatine with just more reasons to destroy the Republic and implement a tough and ordered society mainly focused upon creating ever more powerful superweapons. He believed that without dramatic change, the galaxy would ultimately be doomed by more powerful enemies such as the Vong because of the Republic's apathetic and self-serving government. Thrawn certainly agreed with this view. He believed that the Republic would be unable to defeat the Vong. And who's to say he's wrong? After all, the Republic had no standing military, was beset with corruption, and technological progress had pretty much stagnated since the days of the Old Republic. If the Yuzong Vong had invaded just a century before, it is extremely likely that there would be nothing left of the Star Wars galaxy. The Empire's military structure is certainly good evidence that Palpatine was preparing the galaxy against an external threat rather than an internal one. Its fleet of Imperial Star Destroyers was certainly not designed to combat small numbers of guerrilla fighters like the Rebels. Imperial Star Destroyers were based upon the Venator-class Star Destroyer, which was specifically built to combat the overwhelming forces of the CIS, as well as to conduct full invasions of planets. The Rebel Alliance were mobile and adaptable, and the Imperial Navy was just not well suited to combat this fighting style. Its military was designed to fight off extraterrestrial threats, something the Empire used repeatedly to justify its growing military to the general public. Unfortunately, many did not believe the Empire's warnings about extragalactic threats, and the Rebels ultimately went on to bring down the Empire. Palpatine's obsession with superweapons also makes more sense within the context of the Vong invasion. The Death Stars, the Sun Crusher, and the number of other superweapons that were able to destroy entire planets do not make strategic sense when facing an enemy that doesn't even own one planet. The destruction of planets simply wastes Imperial resources. However, it does make sense if you are preparing for a war against a far more powerful warrior race. Others argue that the creation of the Death Star and the bloated military was largely due to the Tarkin Doctrine, the idea that the threat of overwhelming force would keep the citizens of the Empire in line. And while this is true, it seems likely that the threat of outside invasion was at least part of the reason why Palpatine was so obsessed with creating these superweapons. In fact, it was around the time that Palpatine learned of the Vong threat that he began work on the Death Star. It seems probable that Palpatine created the Death Star to achieve both the goal of crushing the rebellion, but its main purpose was to defend the galaxy from outside threats. It also suggests that he wasn't as bad as rebel propaganda might advocate. While the Clone Wars did devastate entire planets and led to a catastrophic loss of life, it was rather minuscule compared to the devastation caused by the Vong. What's more, he deliberately created an army of clones and battle droids to minimize civilian casualties. As the puppet master of both sides, Palpatine could have easily conscripted civilians into the armies of both the CIS and the Republic. However, he chose not to, as his goal was not to create unnecessary death and destruction. His goal was simply to scare the galaxy's population into accepting the Empire. Some, such as my good friend Eckhart's Ladder, argue that Palpatine's main goal could not possibly have been defending the galaxy from the Vong, as he eliminated the Jedi Order. While it is true that they were formidable fighters who could have aided against the Vong threat, there simply was not enough of them. Only 10,000 members at the very most. Furthermore, the Yuzong Vong were largely unaffected by the Force, as they had been cut off from it a millennia ago. Force users were unable to sense them, and powerful telekinetic blasts barely caused them to stumble. However, Force Lightning and other Sith offensive abilities were proven to work against them very effectively. The corrosive nature of Force Lightning was in fact one of the few things that could penetrate through the Vong's lightsaber-resistant bio-armor. While it is unknown how much information Palpatine actually had learned about the biology of these extragalactic beings, it is likely that he was well aware of their lack of presence in the Force. After all, he was one of the most powerful dark-side users of all time, and must have wondered why he could not sense the presence of such an overwhelming force approaching the galaxy. If Palpatine was indeed aware of this fact, which in my opinion is quite likely, then he may have been able to theorize they would be unaffected by ordinary Force powers, with only Sith abilities that bent the will of the Force being able to affect such a species. After all, his master was the preeminent midichlorian scientist Darth Plagueis the Wise, who had a keen interest in another Force-resistant species, the Yin Churi. If anyone in the galaxy was going to work out that the Vong would be more vulnerable to the dark side, it was Palpatine. This would make sense why he destroyed the Jedi Order. Not only were they obstacles to his goal of militarizing the galaxy against the Vong, they were inferior Vong killers than Inquisitors or dark-side-wielding clones, due to the Vong's vulnerability to dark-side powers. If Palpatine had spent another 30 years unhindered by the Rebel Alliance, the creation of a Force-sensitive, dark-side-wielding clone army, possibly enhanced through Dark Trooper technology or Sith alchemy, would have provided the Empire with formidable fighters against the Vong, far more powerful or dangerous than the Jedi. So ultimately, was Palpatine a bad guy? Or was he actually the benevolent dictator of the galaxy? Well, it is likely that if Palpatine had gone unchallenged until the time of the Yuzong Vong invasion, the creation of superweapons, the vast Imperial Navy, as well as advanced projects such as the Dark Troopers or Force-sensitive clones would have been able to repel the Vong invasion with far greater success than the New Republic did. The New Republic was largely ineffective against the Vong, and due to the slow workings of the Senate, did not order a counterattack until it was too late, ultimately dooming hundreds of trillions to their deaths. It is unlikely that the Empire would have been so slow to respond, and ultimately could have saved the lives of many of the galaxy's citizens. Therefore, from a consequentialist moral perspective, Palpatine was not as bad as he is often portrayed. Yes, he was an evil dictator, hellbent on absolute power, whose actions killed billions across the galaxy. However, these actions were intended to save trillions or even quadrillions of lives in a future war with the Vong. And even though Palpatine's empire did not survive up until the events of the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, its creation still helped the galaxy repel the Vong. The Empire's rise led to technological advancement and militarization that allowed the New Republic to defeat the Vong, albeit only just. If Palpatine had never existed and the Jedi and Republic had continued as they were for another half-century, the Vong would most likely have crushed the Republic. It was simply not organized or militarized enough to stand against them. This would have put the casualties of the Yuuzhan Vong invasion in the tens of quadrillions, a colossal number compared to the billions killed due to Palpatine's actions in the Galactic Civil War and the Clone Wars. So, from a certain point of view, Palpatine actually saved the galaxy from complete annihilation, something Jedi and Republic sympathizers often forget. So, what do you think? Do you think that Palpatine was actually a good guy, or do you think he was an evil maniac? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching guys, and as always, may the Force be with you.